financial aid, and I actually love it, is because it provided me with an opportunity to get an education, an affordable education. I helped pay for my schooling so I could do something I love every single day. I love what I do. If I was independently wealthy, I'd be helping students, even if I didn't get paid for it. But until I hit the lotto, I love the fact that I have a career in a field that I love and that I was able to get my education. And it was basically because I was able to receive financial aid that made it affordable. So I love being able to talk to students about the opportunities in finding financial aid. So today, we're going to learn about what financial aid is, the types of aid that are out there, when you should apply for financial aid, how to apply, scholarships, and some help and resources. And I encourage you to, as we go through this, have your financial aid worksheet out that you received, because a lot of the answers on that worksheet are going to be in this presentation. And also feel free to ask questions, and we will make sure to get you to your questions at the end, and we may even answer some of them during the presentation. So what's financial aid? Simply, financial aid is money to help pay for college. There's lots of different types of financial aid, but what it does is it makes college more affordable for you. And in Washington State, we have the Washington College Grant, which is awesome because it also includes approved apprenticeships. So there's all these different pathways to post-secondary, and financial aid helps with a lot of them. When we talk about financial aid, we really look at it as an umbrella. So I know in Washington, we don't really use umbrellas. We use like jackets with hoods. That's like a Washingtonian thing. But for financial aid, we like to use this umbrella to show that financial aid is a term that covers lots of different things. So financial aid covers grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. We're going to talk a little bit more about these 4 types of financial aid that you can receive. So grants. Grants are my favorite because I am super frugal, you guys. I am probably the most frugal person in Thurston County, if not Western Washington. I'm willing to take challengers at this point. So I love grants because these are typically funds that you can receive. They're called gift aid that you don't have to pay back unless, for example, you don't meet what's called satisfactory academic progress. And so here's the example I have. When I was teaching at a community college, I had a student show up the first day of school. She was registered in my class, and I signed off on her paperwork, and she went and got her financial aid check. And so I signed off, yep, you were here this day. She was able to receive some additional funding. And then I never saw her again until finals, not even finals. She rolled into my classroom 10 minutes after I finished the last final of the day. And she was like, hey, I'm one of your students. And I'm like, are you? And she was like, yeah, I'm in your class. And I'm like, I have 12 students in here, so I would know if you were in my class. She's like, no, I was here the first day, and you helped me with my financial aid, you signed my paperwork, and I got my money. I was like, okay, but you didn't come to class. Oh yeah, well, me and my friends that weekend decided to go to Vegas because we had so much money, and we kind of lost all of it there. So I'm back to get some more money, please. Ruh-roh. So for example, that student who took their money and went to Vegas instead of going to school, she never withdrew from her classes, she never attended her classes, and she did owe the school money back because she received a refund on her tuition because she didn't attend some of her classes. I encourage you, make sure you read the fine print, but it just means that you're going to complete a certain percentage of the classes you attempt. It doesn't mean if you fail one class that you're going to lose your financial aid, but I encourage you. Financial aid's awesome. It's a great way to pay for school. It's not a great way to pay for Vegas. Just the easiest way to think about it is use these funds to help you be successful in school. There's 2 different types of grants we have lots of grants, but the 2 main ones that you'll find are state and federal. State grants like the Washington College Grant, which is specific to Washington State, and then the Pell Grant, which is there's federal and state Pell. So when you receive an award letter, you're going to apply to colleges and you're going to fill out your financial aid, and then they're going to give you an award letter, and it's going to say on there, if it says grants, you're going to want to like high-five yourself because it means it's money you're not going to typically have to pay back. My whole goal for you, for students, is that you will use all of these pieces of the puzzle of financial aid, scholarships, grants, work study, everything so that you can make it the cheapest cost possible. My goal for your generation is that you are the first generation in a long time to graduate without crippling financial debt from college. That you're using every resource possible to reduce the cost of going to college, and maybe let the take all the loans option land on my generation's shoulders, because a lot of us just took loans out without thinking about how to pay them back. We didn't look at other types. I have friends that took out just loans but never accepted their grants, made a lot of missteps. And so we want to make sure that you use all of the resources because you guys are going to run this world very shortly. We are literally just borrowing this from you, and you guys are getting ready to run this place. And I want to make sure that you have the education you need to do what you love so you can run this world and not be in debt. That's why I like doing this. One way that I was able to finish my bachelor's without going into a lot of debt was scholarships. Scholarships are gift aid as well. They don't have to be repaid, and they're really from different organizations, colleges, and can be used sometimes as a one-time gift. Sometimes they'll say, hey, this is renewable, and you'll get it every single year that you're going to college. There's a lot of different options for looking for scholarships. The Washboard is one of them. This is our website where you build a profile and it matches you to scholarships. Here's the real thing about scholarships right now. I received a lot of phone calls last year from different people I've worked with in the past who work with scholarships, asking me what is going on? Why are students not applying for scholarships this year? And other than the fact that I was like, a pandemic, I don't know, that things were kind of chaotic last year, they did tell me there was quite a few scholarships that went unawarded. And I worry that that will be the same issue this year. So I encourage you, be the student that applies for scholarships. I've seen them go unawarded. I was at a college fair, and they had a scholarship table, and this group, it was a soccer organization, that they had a $500 scholarship. And I'm not really a sports person. I'm an indoor kid. So I'm like, oh, that's cute. They have a little scholarship. And I just assumed like you probably have to play sports to get it. And I just noticed no one was coming by the table. I said, has anyone applied for your scholarship? She's like, no, not yet. And you know, it's closing in a couple days. So can I take a look at the application to see how hard it is? Just, I'm curious. It was 5 questions, you guys. It was, what is your name? Do you like soccer? Right there, I don't even have to like your sports ball in order to get this scholarship. What have you learned playing soccer? And how will you use those skills in college? And like, what school are you going to? Those were the questions. That was it. Students weren't filling it out. So I said, okay, I'm just curious. So if I just wrote down, hi, I'm Christina, sports ball, I guess so. I think I would learn teamwork, and that's what I would bring to college. Money, please. They said if no one else applied, you would be the one getting the scholarship. Be the student that applies. Always apply for scholarships. You won't get every single one, but man, it is so wonderful when you get some of them. I applied for scholarships every other weekend all through college, and it really helped offset the cost of my education. I paid $3,000 for my bachelor's out of pocket. That was it. And that was because I received a renewable scholarship that I was supposed to sign the paperwork on every quarter. But one of the quarters I decided to go to the ocean with my friends. I was supposed to go to the financial aid office to fill out the paperwork, but instead my friends pulled up in a truck and said, hey, we're going to Ocean Shores. And I was like, that sounds like fun. They already know that I need this money. I'll just miss the deadline. And when I missed the deadline, I had to take out a loan because they gave it to somebody else. Follow your deadlines with scholarships. Be the student that applies. There's a lot of them out there. And if a scholarship's requiring you to pay money to apply, it is a red flag. These should be free for you to apply for. And I encourage you to identify at least 5 to 10 that you're interested in applying for. Okay, loans. This is what I'm trying to make sure you don't have to take, or take as small amount as possible. There's a lot of different types of loans, but these are the 2 main ones that you will be considered for in the financial aid process: unsubsidized and subsidized. And you don't have to memorize these, but it's important for you to know when you are taking out loans, the types of loans that you're taking. So unsubsidized loans are loans that when you take that loan out, the minute you take the loan out, you're going to start paying interest on it. That's going to start accruing. So there's going to be a certain percentage of that amount that you have to pay every month on top of the amount that you're taking out. Subsidized loans are where you take out the loan, and while you're in school and for a short period after you graduate from college, you are not going to have to pay the interest. The government's subsidizing it. They're paying it for you. Just remember that no matter what type of loan you take out, you will have to pay those loans back. It's very easy to spend money. It's very hard to pay it back. So I encourage you, if you're offered loans, you don't have to take the whole amount. You can take partial loans. So if you're like, they offered me $6,000, but I really only need $2,000 because I've decided to, reduce my costs a little bit. You can only take the $2,000 out. It's no problem. Another way to reduce your cost of education is work study. I know the 2 words together, work and study, sound like a real bummer. You're like, hardest of passes. But work study is an opportunity that provides jobs for you that are part-time, that know you're a student first and foremost. These are typically jobs on campus. If you're kind of a nerd like me, you'll be really excited that you can get jobs in the library. I enjoyed that, as well as you can get jobs in outreach. My friends worked in the fitness center. I have students who are tutoring and getting paid for it. I had a student that worked in student life a couple years ago, where literally they just put together student activities and they wanted to be an event planner. So they learned all about contracting, catering contracts, liability waivers, all these things that they would have to think about for event planning, they were doing in their actual job. It was awesome, and they were getting paid. She came to me one day and said, I just helped students spin a prize wheel and they gave out prizes and they paid me today. I was like, sounds like the best job ever. So I encourage you, when you're looking at financial aid, say yes to work study. You can always decline it if it's offered to you. It's based on your income and your family's income as well. But they are great opportunities while you're in school to get some extra money and also start building your resume. Okay, so I'm talking about all this money that's out there, but where is it actually coming from? It's coming from the federal government, our state government, colleges, and organizations. And so federal funds can typically be used at schools all across the US as long as they qualify for financial aid. Washington state financial aid has to be used in Washington. And colleges may offer additional funds to you to try to make sure that are specific to that school. So they're trying to say, hey, if you come to the school, we're going to offer you these extra funds, this extra scholarship, these extra grants. And then organizations, this can include banks, churches, a lot of different places will have scholarships, professional organizations that will be providing scholarships to help offset the cost of education. Typically, a lot of these organizations are looking at the fact that, hey, we know students in our area will earn more money and be better off if they have an education, and therefore we want to make sure that we strengthen our communities by providing these funds. And so it's really cool that you'll have organizations. I even had a student that they went to a business and said, hey, it was a grocery store, they said, the bank across the street's got a scholarship and you don't. I think you should have one. This is why. I told them, like, for us to be able to provide financially to this community, we have to have education and livable wage jobs. And so you should provide a scholarship and you should give it to me. And you know what they did? They created a scholarship and they gave it to her. So I would always ask around, like, is a place offering a scholarship? Check with different organizations. Your schools will also have amazing resources on scholarships too. So when I talk about federal funding, I want you to know that this covers a lot of different things, including those loans that we talked about, and also loans that may be offered to your parents. There's a federal work study program that lets you work sometimes off campus in different federal organizations, and then Pell Grant. And then these are the Washington types of funds. So again, these are funds that can be used in Washington state. This includes the Washington College Grant, something that's near and dear to my heart, the College Bound Scholarship, which you may already have that you signed up for in middle school, the State Work Study Program, which is our state version of work study. Passport to Careers is a program for youth in care. So if you've ever been in foster care, there are resources that you have access to, as well as maybe some additional supports during college. And then the Opportunity Grant. These are all part of our opportunity pathways in Washington state. So why do I get excited about the Washington College Grant? The Washington College Grant is an improved version of the grant that I received when I went to college. So when I was in college, or in high school actually, we had a financial aid completion night my senior year. So kind of like the thing that your school will have coming here soon. And when I showed up, a friend of a friend's mom told me, you're not going to get financial aid, your family's rich, which is the first time I've ever heard that we were rich. So I was very excited about it. So I went and pocketed 2 pieces of pizza, wrapped it up in some tissues, put them in my pocket, and literally left. Spoilers, I should have realized then that if I was pocketing pizza, maybe we weren't so rich. But to the other family, we were. And in honesty, like, we had a roof over our heads. And so to me, I did feel like we were probably pretty rich. So I didn't apply for financial aid because I figured, well, if I'm not going to get it, why apply? So I got 3 jobs to go to college. I was like, how am I gonna pay for college? My mom's like, well, I guess we'll have to get some jobs. I got 3 jobs. I worked at, I was a sandwich artist. I don't know if there's any sandwich artists out there listening to this. That's code for Subway. I also worked at the Swiss Pretzel, the twist you can't resist, but y'all could because it went out of business while I was sitting there. And I did some BOGO action at Payless. So it was really long days, and I tried to squeeze classes in between all of my shifts. And to be honest, I failed my first quarter college horribly because you can't study if you are not sleeping because you're working 3 jobs. So I was getting ready to drop out of school. I was telling them what was going on, and a financial aid officer said, hey, why don't you sit down to the application? And she sat down with me for 30 minutes. I filled out the application, it took about an hour, and they gave me what's called the State Need Grant, and now it's the Washington College Grant. It paid for all of my tuition for 2 years. It was amazing. And that's why I want to make sure, don't let anyone else tell you whether you qualify for financial aid or not. Apply for financial aid. The only way you know if you're going to get financial aid is by applying for financial aid. If I had not ran into that financial aid officer, I would have dropped out of school and I wouldn't be able to do what I love every day. And so I just want to make sure you apply for financial aid. This Washington College Grant is amazing because while it was great when I attended, this is an expansion of it. More families can receive this aid because they've increased the income guidelines. So you can make more money and still be in the guidelines to receive what's called gift aid, those grants. They also included apprenticeship programs. So approved 18-month apprenticeships, you guys can receive funds to help offset the cost of that education. And so I know that it can be expensive. People are like, well, don't you get paid to do an apprenticeship? But you still have to buy tools. You can't weld if you don't have a mask. You're gonna need welding leathers. They get expensive. I had a student who was like, where do I get the non-designer welding leathers? And I was like, they have designer welding leathers? She's like, yeah, it's like $300. I was like, no, those are just regular, that's all your setup. Like that's normal costs. It helped offset some of those costs. You can use the Washington College Grant at 2-year schools, 4-year schools. It really is about what your pathway is. So for example, if you're a family of 4 making less than $50,000 a year, you're going to receive a full tuition award. That means that they will cover tuition at any of the public institutions, including University of Washington, Wazoo, and all the community colleges as well, any of the public 4-year schools, which is great. Also, partial grants are available to families of 4, so this is on average. You can always look at the chart to see your family size and how much you may potentially be offered. But a family of 4 making $97,000 a year will get some sort of gift aid. It's on a sliding scale. If your family's like, well, before we do the application, we just kind of want to know a guesstimate of what we can get. This is the new state financial aid calculator. The state financial aid calculator is where you can enter in some information about your family and your financial circumstances. And what will end up happening is it'll calculate what you may be eligible for in the Washington College Grant as well as Pell Grant programs. Again, the only way to know if you qualify for aid, though, is to apply for the actual application. But this is a great way for families to see what they may be eligible for. Okay, some of you may be college-bound scholarship recipients. And what this is a program that you signed up for in middle school, usually in 7th or 8th grade. It's income-based. It combines with other financial aid to cover the cost of tuition at the public rate, which means it covers up to University of Washington and Wazoo are the highest tuition rates. So if you want to go to a private school, there's a little bit of a difference. And some of those private schools have scholarships for students who are college bound that cover the difference. And so you want to check with private schools if that's the case of where you want to go. So it covers the cost of tuition at public rate, some fees, and a small book allowance. It's a commitment of funds to students, and it can be used at over 62 and 4-year schools in Washington State. So again, this is Washington State funding, so it only can be used in Washington, but it's a great opportunity. I encourage you, if you're a college-bound student, you may not know. It's okay if you can't remember if you signed up for college-bound in middle school, totally fine. That was a long time ago. What you want to do is make sure you check in with your counselor to see if you're a college-bound student. If you're not sure, you signed up in middle school for it, and now your next step, if you are a college-bound student, is to fulfill the college-bound pledge by meeting the income requirements, by completing a financial aid application, by graduating with a 2.0, which is not the impossible dream. I was the poster child of a 90 slacker. If I could do it, you can do it too. And then be accepted to and attend an eligible college. And so what that means is you have 5 years to use 4 years of funding. So you want to make sure that if you are going to take a gap year, you take a gap year and you schedule it as opposed to a gap. Like I've had students who are like, I'm taking a gap year, and then all of a sudden they're like, ooh, it was a gap decade. You want to make sure you have a plan for your gap year so that you come back and use your college-bound scholarship. So we're talking a lot about financial aid, but like, when do we apply for these things? Financial aid is always in October, every single year. And you're going to apply for financial aid every year that you go to college. So it's not just that you're going to do it once. You're going to go every time that you go to college, every year in October. If you're going to college the next year, you apply for financial aid. For me, the easiest way to remember it is when things get pumpkin spice and everything nice out there, you see like pumpkin spice lattes being offered, it's time to start thinking about financial aid. October is my favorite month because it starts with like the state and federal governments, like an application opening where you can say, hey, I need some money for school. And this month literally ends where you can knock on someone's door, like a random stranger's, say 3 words and get free candy. Best month ever. So you want to make sure when things start getting spooky, it also means it's time to apply for financial aid. This year, if you're a senior, class of 2021, congratulations, we're excited for you. You're going to be filling out the 2021-2022 FAFSA. And you're going to use 2019 income information. Now, Before we jump into which application to do, I know some people will say, wait, 2019, our income has changed. Don't worry, we're gonna cover it. There's support for you. I want to acknowledge that COVID has impacted families' incomes greatly. And so they are adjusting and assessing families based upon their current income situation, and we'll talk more about how to do that. So did you guys notice in the last slide, I said FAFSA or WAFSA, and I've used that a couple times, and you're like, wait, 2 applications? Not the case. You only have to do 1 application. And in fact, if you do 2 applications, all you're gonna do is give me more gray hairs and confuse me on which one you actually wanted to do. So you're gonna do the FAFSA or the WAFSA, not both. The FAFSA is the federal application for financial aid, and the WAFSA is the state application. If you qualify for the FAFSA, you will be considered for federal and state funds. So when you fill out the FAFSA, think of it as you are filling out the FAFSA and the WAFSA at the same time. You're doing both of them at the same time in 1 application. If you have a social security number, are from a freely associated state, or a permanent resident, typically you're going to be doing the FAFSA. If you don't have a social security number, if you have expired or unexpired DACA, typically you will be looking at the WAFSA for financial aid. Now, if you're not sure, you're like, I don't know, no problem, don't worry. You're gonna go to readysetgrad.org/WAFSA to see which application you're gonna do. It's gonna ask you some questions about you, and then it's gonna tell you, hey, you qualify for this application or that application. You wanna make sure that you do the application that's correct for you. So again, the FAFSA or the WAFSA. Now, the first word of the FAFSA, what is it? Free. What did I say before that I was? Super frugal. I want to make sure you guys know this is a free application. Both of them are free. If anyone's trying to charge you to apply for financial aid, with the exception of the CSS profile, which does cost money, but if anyone's trying to, and we'll talk more about that, but if anyone's trying to charge you for the FAFSA or the WAFSA, you are on the wrong page. Do me a favor, screenshot the page that you're on, send it to me, because our Attorney General's office got the last 3 of them shut down and rerouted to the correct page. They will try to charge you. What ends up happening if you're on the wrong page, they will try to charge you $80 to take your information and potentially maybe submit it to the financial aid application. Make sure you're either FAFSA.gov or readysetgrad.org. Again, both applications, October 1st is when they open, so you want to start the application as soon as possible. When filling out the application, you guys, these are the most common errors of 2021. Using the correct information. So this is the first time typically students that you guys are filling out a legal form. This is an actual application to the federal or state government. You want to use your legal information. So if you go by a nickname at school, but on your social security card, say for example, it has a different name, you're going to use whatever on your social security card, whatever's on your ID. I know that that may not reflect who you are as a person and your identity, but they're trying to match up stuff to social security databases. If you are in the process right now of having your name legally changed, but it hasn't occurred yet, you will apply under whatever's on your social security card now and update your information with your college. Using the right financial aid year. So when you apply for financial aid, there's going to be 2 years listed. There is the application for right now for students who are like, I'm going to college in a month or 2. That application. And then there's the application for students who are like, hey, next fall, I'm going to college. You're going to do the 2021-2022 application. It sounds futuristic, but it's when you're going to college. Using the correct tax information. So I've had students who will use their parents' tax information as their own income, and that can create some errors. Not completing the application. Last year, I had a lot of students that they got all the way to the end, they thought they were done, and they closed out their application but never clicked submit. So make sure that you receive an email back that says that your application's been received. It's just one of those pieces that I probably had 15 students last year that they're like, wait, and what happens is if you don't touch your application for 45 days, you start the application, let's say you don't do anything to it for 45 days, they remove your information from it. So you have to make sure that when you start that application, you want to keep logging back in on working on it a little bit at a time if you can't finish it right away. And then using the correct parent information. So making sure that if you are considered dependent, which a lot of students, I know that, okay, for financial aid purposes, I hate these terms. I know that you are an independent human who is autonomous, but for financial aid purposes, a lot of you will be considered financially dependent on your parents till 24. I know that that is like really hard to hear, but you will have some opportunities for students that are in special circumstances to be considered independent, but for financial aid purposes, typically you'll need parent information in the process. This is what the FAFSA page looks like. Again, I just want to show it to you so you don't, if it doesn't look like this and doesn't have the website, then you're on the wrong one. This is the WAFSA page. If you're not sure which one to do, make sure you take the assessment. So I talked about special circumstances. So your income for your family may have decreased from 2019 to 2020. I have a lot of families saying like 2019 was awesome. I know 2020 has been like feels like a 30-month year so far and has been rough for families. Your income may have decreased. What will happen is you're going to apply for financial aid with your 2019 tax information. And then when you're done submitting your application, you're going to reach out to colleges to make sure that they know about your new situation. So you're going to be able to reach out and do an appeal for an adjustment of income. And there's a website you guys can go to called Swift Student that actually creates the template for you. It asks you some questions, and then it creates this amazing, well-written letter that gives financial aid officers what they need to make a determination. It's a free tool. It was created last year by a company that had a lot of people reach out to them and say, hey, we need help with these appeal letters. And so they actually built this with a lot of different organizations who do financial aid, as well as some colleges. This can also be used if you have a special circumstance where maybe you don't want your parents' information considered. Maybe you have no contact with your parents. Maybe your parents are incarcerated, some other special circumstances. Also, you can use this to ask for additional emergency funds. So if you're in school, and let's say something happens that's keeping you from being successful, your car breaks down, an emergency happens. I had a student that like they had an infected tooth that they couldn't study because I just felt so bad for them. They got emergency funds to be able to go to the dentist and get that taken care of so that they could be a student. If you are financially struggling at school, it's okay to reach out to your financial aid office to see if they have other options. So the only financial aid process you may have to do that may cost money is the CSS profile. There's only a handful of colleges in Washington State that require this, but what it is it's a additional profile by colleges to assess you for non-federal funds. So usually institutional aid, it really deep dives into like assets and other things to get a better picture of your financial ability to pay for school. It's 25 bucks to apply and it's 16 bucks to send reports. It's by College Board. So think of like when you're doing SAT reports, it's the same style. You can get a fee waiver if you qualify for the SAT fee waiver. They will also provide you a fee waiver for CSS profile. Verification is something you may also experience. It is a process where randomly 1/3 of you will have to provide additional information about your financial circumstances, typically in the form of what's called a tax transcript. So just a verification of your family's income. And so it is a random practice and it's standard. So they randomly select people. The biggest thing in this process, if you are selected for verification, your school sends you a letter or a postcard or puts something in your portal. I don't care if they send you a pigeon with a little note tied around its leg saying you've been selected for verification, you have to respond as soon as possible. I have literally had probably 24 students I've been working with very closely who struggle with this process so much that they didn't go to college. They can't give you money until you finish the process. And we will have workshops this spring. If you get selected for verification, we will have workshops to help you navigate it if you're stuck in the process. The most important thing is to reach out to your college as soon as possible if you're struggling. Financial aid officers are not psychic. If they were, they'd have other jobs. And until they are psychic, you have to advocate for yourself by asking for help. And they're like, I wish students would ask me for help on these things. I hate telling a student like we can't give them money when they really needed help in the first place. So here are your next steps. You're going to explore your pathways. And so part of that is talking to your counselor to make sure you're on track for graduation, figuring out what your graduation pathway is, working on your high school and beyond plan. If you're not sure, we have some resources to help you with your pathways. Your interests may change throughout your whole life. So what you want to do, maybe what you wanted to do in middle school versus what you want to do now versus what you want to do in 10 years, these things may shift, and it's always important to assess your interests and values when looking at the world of work. Determine which financial aid application you are going to use. That's a really important piece so that you know which one you're going to fill out. So you want to make sure that you assess yourself. If you're not sure, if you're like, I think I have a social security number, I'm not sure, it'll ask you questions to assess you for the right application. If you're doing the FAFSA, you're going to do an FSA-ID. This is just you creating an account. Basically, it's you saying, hey, Uncle Sam, I'm going to college next year, but I think I'm going to need you to pony up some of this cash. And then if you're doing the WAFSA, what you're going to do is you're going to fill out an account creation. And so you're just going to create an account that way. And then you're going to start applying for financial aid as soon as possible. Again, if you're not sure what your pathway is, don't worry. And here's the thing, Spoilers, your pathway may change while you're in college. You may change your major. It's not the end of the world. But if you get into a class and you're like, this is my major and I really hate these classes and they're boring, you will also have to do that job for a long time. And then maybe it's okay to change some of those pathways. Don't worry. But if you're not sure your pathway, you can explore on our College and Career Compass. It has you do some assessments to see your interests and tells you about different pathways that may fit with that. We have some college knowledge books for you that cover freshman through senior year. We are happy to send you these in English and Spanish, but it just kind of walks you through information about college, college choice. It's a really cool informational book designed with students in mind. And then we have our junior senior workbook that you can have digitally, as well as we have paper copies. And the cool thing about this is it's more of a workbook. It walks you through all the things about financial aid. And then just as our, we have Facebook, we're on Twitter, and then we have a YouTube channel as well. So just kind of our contacts. And I know that's a lot. I get very excited about financial aid. It's a lot of stuff all at once. You're like, oh my gosh, financial aid. It's okay, don't worry. I go over it a little quickly because I get excited. And that's why we have time for you guys to ask questions. So I encourage you, if you have that piece of paper, your financial aid assignment, if you have that in front of you and there's questions that I haven't answered on there or that you still have, feel free to put those in the chat. Any questions you have about financial aid?
And you could add those questions in on the Q&A feature for the Zoom. I don't see any questions coming up right now, but if you're taking a minute or two, feel free to do that. One of the questions that I did have is for you, Christina. You mentioned that you're going to have verification workshops. Where would students go to find out about your workshops?
We are planning them right now because we heard so much feedback from students struggling with the process. So we're actually in the process of building them right now, and then we're going to send out probably materials to schools right after winter break. So it'll be for probably in January. We'll start having them in January, February to help you navigate that. But if you get stuck and if you get selected for verification and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck and I haven't heard back from my financial aid office yet, you can also make appointments with me. And so I'm gonna, I wonder if I can put it in the question section to put my Calendarly link in there since we don't have chat. But I can give you guys my Calendarly link. And so you can always make a one-on-one appointment with me for financial aid assistance, especially if you've been selected for verification, or if you have errors. You may fill out your application and it may say, oh, you have some errors. Don't worry, we can fix them. It's pretty easy. And we'll have some error repair events around the same time where we will look at lists of students that we see have errors and actually let schools know, hey, we've got this event. And you can come to that event. We'll have breakout rooms based upon the errors, and we'll say, okay, well, this is the error in your application. Here's your breakout room, and that person will help you fix it.
And what we can do too is we can post a link for all that stuff on our counseling website. So as these workshops come up, and her contact information on there, under our counseling website, I'm trying to think of where it'd be. I think it'd be under the counseling news section where it would pop in. So check that out routinely to see if any new information or new events come up. We're also trying to post it on social media, different social media avenues when we have events. So check those out as well. We do have a question that came, two questions that came.
Oh, perfect.
In. Let's see here. If I go abroad for college, could I still apply for financial aid?
Yes, because it depends on, so if you're planning on going abroad next year, two things you want to be mindful of. Are you doing that program through another college in the United States, where you're going abroad for a short period? If that's the case, then you can use federal financial aid at that institution, which pays your tuition, and you have to pay for your room and board and fees. The other thing to be mindful of is there's limited access to study abroad programs right now due to COVID and due to border closures. And so you may not see initially the places that you really want to go to on your list. And it's okay. I have students who are like, well, I'm just going to wait a year and then I'll travel. If you're going directly abroad to a school and applying to an international school, I also encourage you to apply for financial aid, because if the border is still not open, you may not be able to go to that school right away. And you may want to start your education by contacting that school overseas and saying, what can I take right now in the United States to be able to transfer over to help me get towards my degree? So I would have it as a backup plan as well. And there are scholarships to cover out there to cover the room and board, flight, and other fees for study abroad. So make sure you're also looking at study abroad scholarships. It's a great opportunity, especially when, like at your age right now, it's the best time to go. Like it's the only time typically it feels like that you can just uproot for 6 months and go explore a new country.
Thank you. The next question, do we have to apply for financial aid in order to graduate? So, no, you don't have to apply for financial aid in order to graduate from high school. However, if we're talking about requirements, one of the requirements is for you to have access to the information on how to apply for one of either the FAFSA or the WASPA in order to graduate, if that makes any sense. So technically, no, but you do need access to the information. Any other questions? No questions?
I know, I'm gonna let it sit for a second.
It's the money piece, you guys.
I know, this is I'm like, I just want to make sure you guys get all the money that you are qualified for. Here's the thing, like, that money is there. If you don't apply for it, it's like you're saying, well, I just didn't need that money. Like if you don't apply for it, it just, sometimes funds will just sit there and then they think no one needs this money. So you want to make sure that you're applying for financial aid and scholarships. Scholarships this year, you guys, I just feel like after my response from people last year, there are a lot out there that didn't get awarded. And when that happens, what happens is someone who's like, I'm rich and I want to give money to somebody to go to school, and people are like, we don't need it. They go, oh, no one needs money for college, and they stop donating. Be the student that applies.
Well, while you guys are thinking of questions, I want to re-highlight the Ready, Set, Grad website. Some of you have questions about where do I go looking for scholarships. They do have a Money for College tab up top on their website, and you can see the different resources and college scholarship search engines on there. Another question that I have had students ask me is how, if I want to go to a university versus a community college, how does scholarships work for that? And scholarships and the FAFSA and WASPA can be applicable to pretty much whatever limits are set by the scholarship guidelines. So I would still apply. And again, there's that VFW scholarship coming up, their deadline on October 31st. It's a local one. So the nice thing about local scholarships is that there are less students applying for it, therefore higher chances for you to get that money. That's how the WASH board works as well. Washington State high school students, so less students applying for that.
Yeah, typically the bigger, like the bigger the geographical area that scholarship's serving, the more students that are going to apply, the odds kind of change, where like the odds are more in your favor when you're doing something that's a smaller pool of students, which is awesome.
Still no questions. I'm trying to think of questions on your guys' behalf too.
I was like, any other questions from, I know you guys have these worksheets you're filling out as homework. I'm like, I'm here, like this is the best. I'm like, this is the only time I have homework. I'm like, I'm here to give you all the answers. So if there's something that you haven't filled out on that sheet or questions that you have, please feel free to type them in. And don't, like, if you're like, oh, I don't want to ask this question, I guarantee you, if you're not asking the question, there's probably 3 other people thinking the same thing, but I don't want to ask it. So feel free to ask any questions.
And you can ask the question, and if you start off with, please don't post this question, I can not post it so it doesn't come up to everybody else, but we could still address it. The other question that I'm thinking about is, you mentioned the SWIFT student. Is this something that the students can find on the college's website, or is this something that it's an app? Like, where do we find this?
Oh, it's if you go to it's FormSwift/Swift student, but if you just Google Swift student, like or student Swift, it'll come right up. It's a really cool tool though, and we have it linked on our website as well. But it's a really great way to, like, man, it'll ask you questions in regular language and then it converts it to financial aid. Oh, this is a good one. Is financial aid based off your primary guardian's household income? So what will happen is, if you're considered dependent, which most students are, it's going to ask for your parent information. If your parents are divorced, it is going to be the parent that you live with the most. So it's not about It's not even about who claims you on taxes, it's where you're living the most. That's the parent that's going to provide income information. If that parent is remarried, it's going to be your parent and that step parent, their information together. If you are in a legal guardianship, which means you've had formal paperwork filled out through the courts and you have a legal guardian, it's going to ask you that question on the FAFSA and WAFSA, and you'll be considered independent, and you won't be considered, they won't consider your guardian, your legal guardian's income. That is for special circumstances where people have gone and have a legal guardian who's not a biological parent. If you are living with like a aunt, uncle, grandparents, you're in a different living situation, then definitely read through those questions on the financial application very thoroughly, because it's going to give all these different situations that may make you independent.
Well, and along with that, the other question I get, Christina, is my parents are separated. I know which one I live the most with. And they have a significant other that also lives in the household. Do we have to report their
It's only if they're legally married. If they are legally married and it's your legal step parent, then you include their information. If they are not married but living under the same roof, then it's just the parent information. And the other thing is I get a lot of questions about is, what do I do if my parents are undocumented? Can I still apply for aid? So the financial aid application is just for you as a specific individual. And so it's about your status. If your parents are undocumented, no problem. If you qualify for the FAFSA, all they'll do is put zeros in instead of a social security number. And instead of using an FSA ID to sign your application, they'll do a paper application, paper signature. So it's pretty easy. You just fill out the application like normal, put zeros in for social security number. It's just one of those pieces that I've heard misconceptions, and I'm like, nope, it doesn't matter your parent status. And if you're undocumented and you have lived in Washington for the last 3 years and you live in Washington post-graduation, you typically will meet House Bill 1079 requirements and you'll qualify for WAFSA assessment. So even if you're undocumented, there's also additional pathways. And if you don't meet any of those, you're going to make an appointment with me so that I can get I'm happy to pull scholarships for you for undocumented students who don't meet qualifications for either application. I have a list of 45 pages of scholarships that have no citizenship requirement, and I'm happy to walk you through them.
And additionally, just to reiterate, we are going to have a FAFSA WASFA workshop night on November 10th and 12th. You do want to sign up for this ahead of time, and there are specific things that you'll want to bring to that session. We're going to get help from Everett Community College on this event. You don't have to be attending Everett Community College next year to get help with this on this night. So make sure to jot it down on your calendars. Let's see, we have 2 questions that came up.
Okay, let's see.
If I have a tutor, I need to put their name, do I need to put their name in the parents' information session or my actual parents', say potentially if they live in a different country?
Oh, okay. So if your parent, you're gonna use that assessment to see if you're considered independent, if you're in a different living circumstance. So if you're staying with someone who are not your biological parents, read through those questions really thoroughly. And then if it's still saying, well, you're gonna need parent information and you can't provide that, you're gonna reach out to the college. So you'll still submit it. You're going to submit it saying, I can't provide parent information. And then you're going to reach out and they're going to have a confidential conversation with you about your circumstances to make sure not only that they can assess you as dependent or independent, but they may also know about resources on campus to help you. Where are the priority deadlines? Priority deadlines change from school to school. Oh my goodness. So I am a big dork, so I like spreadsheets. I encourage you, if you're not a dork, it's okay. We can still join you into this spreadsheet club. What you want to do is create a spreadsheet with your school names, the admissions deadline and the financial aid deadline, and like where you are in that process. And this is why. There are admissions deadlines, there are financial aid deadlines, and most schools, they are not the same. Financial aid deadlines vary from school to school. So like University of Washington, theirs is January 15th for financial aid, November 15th for admissions. You can see there's a big difference there. Other colleges, financial aid is not due until like February. So you want to make sure that you're looking at each school's website and pulling that information so you don't miss a deadline. And when it says deadline, that means that that's the deadline of your application being complete, like that you have everything in. There's no real errors that will hold up the application. I encourage you, when it says there's a priority deadline for that application for financial aid, take that deadline, bring it back 2 weeks. That gives you 2 weeks to address any errors that are in that application. That priority deadline is for what they call a completed file. And if you don't have that, they won't assess you at the priority level.
And the other deadline to keep an eye out for, so there's the admissions application deadlines, the financial aid deadlines, priority deadlines, regular deadlines. There's also sometimes a separate general scholarship application deadline from each of the college. So UW can say our application is due December 1st, but there's a separate application for their scholarship, and that's due November 15th. Western can have their scholarship application embedded into their admissions application, so you may not need to worry about that. So you'd have to check into each college's website to see what the deadline is for their general scholarship application as well.
Yeah, and if you're struggling navigating the site and finding it, just Google the school's name, financial aid deadline. It usually takes you to the right page. Just make sure it's for the right year. I see a question about income cutoff and eligibility for financial aid. So that's a commonly asked question, and it really varies from family to family. It's based upon the size of your family and your income. And so for that, I encourage you to use that Washington State financial aid calculator that I showed earlier to kind of see an idea of what you might qualify for. I've had families who say, well, we're not going to get any gift aid or grants, so we're not going to apply. But then I always ask, well, what about loans? Are you paying for this straight cash? Like, do you just have like a money tree you're going to shake in and it's going to fall tuition money into your hands? How's it going to work? And if you don't have the money set aside for all your full costs, you want to make sure you're applying for financial aid to be considered for loans, because the other option is private loans. And especially right now, I'm finding with students that the federal loans have given a lot of flexibility during COVID. Being able to skip payments, not paying interest right now, I'm not gonna lie, has been amazing for me and my colleagues during COVID and furloughs. And so those flexibilities are there, but I have a friend who has a private loan and they're like, we don't care, just give us our money every month. So you wanna make sure, some of the private loans also won't have different options like doing a waiver of your, there's a forgiveness plan that you can do depending on the service that you do, federal service, state service, or teachers. And so you want to make sure that those other opportunities are available to you as well. And we have a loan advocacy person at our agency that will talk to you about loans. And if you're worried about loans, they will walk you through the different types of loans, benefits, and maybe challenges of them.
Well, and keeping in mind too that with applying to the FAFSA, if your family's income situation changed based from 2019, you would still want to apply for that appeals opportunity should anything else come up along the way, whether it's now or in 2020 or before you just start the next school year.
Yeah, I've had students who are like, well, I don't know if we should do financial aid right now because my parents got a warn notice, which means that they're going to get laid off next month. And so we're like, yes, definitely do it because your financial situation, they're like, well, we don't know if it's going to happen or not. I said, but you don't know. And so you want to build a game plan for all these different pathways just in case.
And when I know we've talked about like making sure that you are utilizing the right source to get you the answers and support through this process, as well as college applications. Make sure Christina is from the 12-year campaign, which is from the Washington Student Achievement Council, which is a legit source. And you will never be charged for utilizing their services.
If someone's trying to charge you money to help you with this process, I encourage you to pause because there's a lot of people out here that want to make sure you have free access to these resources and these supports. You have your FAFSA completion workshops on the 10th and 12th. You have those opportunities. If you're like, oh, I have to work those dates. We have statewide opportunities where you can do a virtual, attend one of our virtual events. We're doing one this weekend. We're doing them basically every week until December 1st, and then we'll have other workshops available. But if someone's trying to charge you for this, I've had students who told me, like, I signed up with this company and now they're charging me, and the student ended up getting charged more than they were going to get for financial aid. Mm-hmm. Make sure that if anyone's charging you, a lot of people, we work really hard because we want you to have these opportunities for free. And if you're confused about if it's a legitimate site or not, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to verify if this is legitimate or not.
Any other questions?
I know it's a lot of information all at once. So if
I
you're
know.
feeling a little overwhelmed, it's okay. There are some follow-up events that will help assist you. And you can always reach out also with your parents' questions too.
And like I said, this webinar is being recorded, so we are going to be posting it on our website. I don't know that we'll be able to do it today, but for sure, I think by next week it should be up there. Got another question. They're coming up with questions. They're just maybe being a little shy at the beginning.
Okay, so what do I do if I plan to go to UTI? Okay, so depends on which campus. You're probably looking at, my guess is you're looking at probably the, I know right now Arizona, I think, is the one most of my students have wanted to go to. I used to advise the automotive club at South Petersburg Community College for a long time, and so automotive is definitely one of my areas that I love. It really depends on when you're going there, which campus you're going to. You still want to apply for financial aid and their scholarships. If you are utilizing, a lot of students that I know who are going there are using a parent's post 9/11 GI Bill. So if your parent has said, oh, I've got college is taken care of, I have something from my service in the military that's going to pay for school, and it's called a post 9/11 GI Bill. If you're receiving that, still apply for financial aid, because you can layer that with the other types of funding. So that's a misconception, and that will help pay for tools and things like that. I know that it's very compact. The other thing is, I would encourage you, if you're looking at UTI for automotive, also look at your community colleges in the area too. And this is why. The costs for the colleges, the community colleges, may have comparable programs with certifications that may take a little bit longer, but may be more affordable for out-of-pocket costs. No matter which pathway you go, you want to get ASE certified, so that you have, if you have your own shop, you have those certifications, which really show customers your skill level and what you've done. So if you go to the one in Arizona, so what you want to do is you're going to connect with them to see what scholarships they have, because you'll be considered out of state for tuition. You're going to ask if there's any scholarships they have to cover the difference. But no matter which program you go towards, make sure that you're getting your certifications, your SE certifications. Because if not, sometimes I have students who are like, oh, I just didn't get my certifications. And I'm like, and now they're starting as a lube tech. And we know that's no fun. We know, we're like, oh, wait, I've been doing that since high school. So, and if you have any sort of dual credit that you've received from automotive, make sure you're letting UTI know about those credits.
All righty. We'll give it one more minute, but in that minute, if any last minute questions come up, I do want to also quickly share World Language Competency Test. We're going to have a link on our website should you want to sign up for that. This is intended for students who know another language besides English and want to receive high school credit for that. Again, information to come out shortly on that, but the sign up will be on our website, and the test will be on December 11th, should everything go as I currently have planned. And if you're still trying to figure out what you want to do after high school, or you are planning on entering the military, you can also take the ASVAB, and the ASVAB is going to be proctored on November 20th. And we do have that sign up available now on our counseling website under counseling news. So check it out. All right. I think that's what we got.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much for inviting me out and letting me talk about my favorite subject. If you guys have questions, you can always reach out. And I encourage you to use the events that you have and the events that we're providing as well to complete your applications.
And thank you, Christina, for helping us with all of this information. We truly appreciate your expertise.
Well, thank you so much.